G'day fellas, welcome commanders. Today we take a look at a unit build, not a T2 constructor build, and that is because of the Season 3 changes. If you're not aware, Season 3 for Beyond All Reason is coming up in the new year, and there's a whole bunch of changes that are going to be happening to T2s, so T2 labs, T2 constructors, T2 energy converters, T2, I think it's just metal extractors, fusions. Everything's changing basically. They're just making things more expensive in T2. Which is fine. It doesn't really change what we need to do, but it means that things are going to become a little bit more balanced. So it means that T2 is not going to be as strong, it's not going to be as early, as impactful, and so naturally we're exploring ways to try and maximize the value that we can get from the tech position. So that's exactly what we're doing today. And one of the first comments I got in here was from the highest OS player on our team, White Seraph, and he asked me, Drongo, why don't you ever Cortex Tech? And I said, I am, literally, today. So today, that's when we begin Cortex Tech. And the reason why is quite simple. So if we look at glitters, there's a number of different ways that you can play it, right? When it comes to, I guess, the conventional means. It really depends on your approach. At the lower levels, we see players definitely favoring constructors. At the higher levels, we see players that are favoring units. So in this video, we're going to be walking through this game. It's a very quick game, and then we're going to be looking at a comparison, and then we're going to be going into a build order after that. So that's essentially it. Now, we're doing a 6 mechs opening here. So this is inspired by Von Comet. You can see him right there in the spectator, just making sure he gets a good idea on exactly what we're up to. And the idea here is quite simple. We want to gather up as much metal as we can. Because of the changes to the T2 lab, essentially what's happened is they've made it more expensive on the build power cost. So basically it means that you can't rush it up as quickly unless you've got more construction turrets. And so we have to invest more heavily in construction turrets. And because we have to invest more heavily in construction turrets, means that we need a little bit more energy. And so naturally, because we need more energy, we need a bit more metal. So there's all these little things that start occurring. So the build order that I'll be showing you today is actually not this build order that you'll be seeing. So we're not going to focus on this too much. We're more just going to talk about sort of what happens and how the meta is probably going to shift, especially on glitters, but probably more broadly. It will depend on other maps as well. Like I'm not going to comment on Rotato, but I suspect these changes will obviously have a pretty big impact on them as well. Supreme, I don't know, that's going to be a whole different kettle of fish. So what's our goal? Our goal is to get a T2 lab up as quickly as we can and then start making T2 units. And that's part of the reason why we're playing as Cortex, because we could do the same thing as ARM, right? We could go and say, all right, we're going to make Mausers and we're going to send them up middle, but the Mauser is not as impactful as the Quaker. The Quaker has an incredible ability, and that's AoE. So it's basically like a fat boy, but it's also a Mauser. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 unit, and that's part of the reason why we've chosen Cork here. If we had to make constructors, we'd probably go with ARM, just because, well, it just feels a little bit more flexible. You can always move into the T2 vehicle lab a little bit later on as well as just your opening being a lot smoother because your wins are cheaper. Everything's a little bit cheaper on ARM. So that's essentially it. So we're going to start off by putting down some construction turrets, and then we're going to be looking to go into A-Solars, and that's another thing that has been changed in the most recent patch. A-Solars, or Advanced Solars, have received a nice little buff. They now provide 80 energy. So you can see right there, it says on the UI that they provide 75. That's incorrect. They provide 80 energy. And it basically makes them more efficient than a fusion, but that's not accounting for their energy cost. If you account for their energy cost, then they are a little bit more expensive. But when it comes to metal, pound for pound, they're better than a fusion. Very, very slightly. But yes, it's one of those things where I don't have a problem making Advanced Solars now. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And you can see we have a really big stall out on wind early on. So let's introduce our 2 team captains for today. So we've got Inquisitor Darius, who is fighting off in the rainbow lane. And then we've got White Seraph, who is fighting against him in the, I don't even know what you call this lane, the front that's not rainbow and it's not counter canyon or anti canyon. It's just kind of like, it's the good one. It's the one that you always want to be in. It's the one where you kind of get help from this player here, and you know, we've got Rainbow that can always move across and help you out. And so we're going to be looking to try and leverage his strength early on in this game. And you can already see he's gone ahead and secured the 3.2 mechs here, now beginning to push out towards that enemy 3.2 mechs. Not a whole lot of units up yet for his opponent. So Inquisitor Darius has got a lot of metal in the bank, but not really much. Oh, I don't know what sound that was. I just heard a sound like a chime or something. You could see me just saying something in the chat right here. So meanwhile, behind the scenes, I overflowed my T1 lab just a little bit. But yeah, essentially at this stage, what we're looking to do is trying to capitalize off our best players. Obviously, we're going to help out any lanes that aren't doing well, but the main goal here is anyone who's kind of winning a lane, we want them to steamroll that lane even more. Because one of the key components to Quaker and Mauser is that they're strong, but they need something to assist them. They need backup. So that's part of the reason why we choose players, especially players that have got a bit more units. So here we can see White Seraph's got quite a lot of units, and we want to try and leverage that as much as possible. Now, one interesting thing to note here is that we did a 6 mechs walk in the beginning. That's going to maximize the amount of metal that we've got. We've also picked up a 7th metal extractor, and this is something that I think will become absolutely key heading into Season 3, is that tech players, especially on glitters, well, specifically on glitters, will be given this specific metal extractor. It's the same one that's over here on this side, just mainly because if we were to count up the amount of extractors that are here, I think Inquisitor Darius will probably be looking at about 11 to 12, maybe even 13 in some lanes on the front. So giving that one over, it obviously hurts, but it's not as big. It's definitely more impactful for your tech player to have it. So we're going to start off here just by sending out the radar and the jammer. They're a little bit slower. We always want to hit the front with a Mauser as quickly as possible. So what we're going to do is make sure that we fly that Mauser, the Quaker out. And just remember that the Quaker is objectively better than the Mauser. The Mauser is still good. It's cheaper, but the Quaker, just because of that AoE damage, is so much better. And that's part of the reason why we are opting for it here when playing as core, just because we've got that. We're really looking to try and maximize our value here. Now, this isn't just like sending a couple of units to the front, because I want to like touch back to that video a little bit earlier, like that we did on glitters, the very first glitters video that we did, in fact. You can see we're making a little bit of a mistake here with the Mauser. This Mauser could definitely have been dropped up here and microed a little bit better, so not getting immediate impact from it. But Mausers or like early units are very, very strong, especially with the Season 3 update. So I suspect you're probably going to be seeing quite a bit more of this, and I suspect it's going to counter T2 cons. So you can see back here we've got T2 constructors coming out over towards the opponent's base, and already going into a 3rd advanced metal extractor, which is probably a little bit too many, to be honest. Probably just want to open up with 2 just to start with, just so you can get all the T2 cons out to everybody. Then you can kind of focus on it. And you can see already Darius saying in the chat, game already over, go next. And he's in a bit of a hard spot, right? He's lost his 3.2. There's a lot of units in his lane, and now there's Mausers that are going to start pushing him back. Oh, sorry, Quakers. Apologies for giving them the wrong name. But let me turn down that music a little bit. So meanwhile, behind this, what are we doing? So we've got our forward lab. Now, the idea behind the forward lab is quite simple. The reason why we do the forward lab is just so that our units are closer to reinforce. If we were to do our lab back here, maybe that's an extra 10, 15 seconds that it's got to run. And because of that, our lab being at the front means that those units get out faster. And if you think about it, right, the lab here versus lab here, the units are always going to come out at the same time because it's dependent on your metal, typically, is what matters. So if you could make your units 10 to 15 seconds faster, you would, right? And so that's exactly what we're doing. So we're trying to find that as much as we possibly can. And now the other thing to note is we're starting to put backup into our other lanes as well. So we've got a Mauser as well as a radar vehicle out here. We've got the 2 Mausers, and now we're also flying out Mausers over towards the lane on the left. Now, you can't do this with Fat Boys. Why can't you do it with Fat Boys? Fat Boys are expensive. It is so expensive to get a Fat Boy out. A Fat Boy is really good for controlling one lane. But by the time you get that first Fat Boy out, you're probably looking on Season 3 changes, probably around 7 minutes 30, assuming that you did go into some T2s. If you didn't go to T2s, probably looking quite a bit earlier than that. But the point is that even if you've got that Fat Boy out, there's a big risk that it gets degunned. There's a big risk that you just get overwhelmed. Whereas here, the Mausers, you can see we've still got 5 Mausers here with the jammer bot and the radar that are now putting pressure on this lane over in the east. We've got multiple Mausers out now over here, putting the pressure on. We've also got more Mausers. It's the word of the day, and we're rallying even more out over towards dark green. And now finally at the 9-minute mark, we're going to be finishing up our last Quaker, and then we're heading into construction vehicles. So I'm just going to pause the game because, as you can see, the enemy team has left. WTF happened, and well, we had some very good teammates on the front. I think we probably could have, twirled our fingers around and not done too much, and they would have been okay today. But of course, it's all about the fact that the Mausers were able to offer that conversion. That's the key difference here. So, essentially, the key point that we're looking to take away here is that we want to get these units out. Our opponent, if we look at our opponent's base, we've got 1, 2, 3 advanced metal extractors, excuse me. Let's just count them right here. So we've got 4, 5, 6 is coming up, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 coming up over here, 17, 18, 19, 20, with the 21st coming up here. So you've got a lot of T2 metal extractors that are coming online. But what good is a T2 metal extractor if you're dead? Why make constructors when unit do trick? And that's something that we'll come in and say here at the end of this game, just simply because as you can see, every lane is collapsing here, just simply because we've had the Quakers in position. We've got Quakers pushing up on every single lane. Like, we've had these ones come across like this, these ones coming through here, and that's essentially it. That's what we're looking for. So now that you've seen essentially what happens here, and of course we're going to attribute this victory not to the fact that we're making Quakers, we just kind of converted, right? Like, this victory probably would have happened at 13, 14 minutes if it wasn't for our Quakers. But the point is that Quakers allow you to have that earlier conversion. Let's take a look at a comparison now. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the more technical components of this. Okay, so here is a comparison of two different builds. I want to shout out to Baldrick from the Bar Discord, who actually said, hey, why don't you try this? And it is absolutely amazing. So essentially, we've got two different build orders up on the screen running at the same time. Let's just go, let's say that. It's in 2x speed, so it'll move a little bit faster. On the left, we've got a 5 mex opening. On the right, we've got a 6 mex opening. Now, there is actually a very small difference when it comes to effective difference between these two. I will say right now, the 6 mex opening is slightly better than the 5 mex opening, but the 5 mex opening is much easier than the 6 mex, mainly because, as you can see right here, we have to put down the lab in this position here just so that we don't overflow metal. And so there's quite a bit of a juggling act that's going on here. So this component of the video, we're going to talk about the build order specifically. We're not going to take a look at this entire video. Instead, I'm just going to skip through, because I'm sure you'll believe me when I say that the 6 mex is better, but the 5 mex is easier. So I'm going to provide a sort of build order, or I will provide very specifically a build order guide on how you can achieve similar results with decent timings. We can skip through this video just to take a look, because it is 2x. In fact, it's only 4 minutes long. Do you guys want to watch it? Maybe we just watch it just so you can see where they both land. Now, one thing to note is we are taking that 7th mex here. As I said, I think this is going to become a foundation of glitters, that the tech player will take that 7th mex, just because it makes a very big difference to the tech player and their timings, but it doesn't make a huge difference to the frontline player and whether or not they get that. So being able to have that extra mex is so incredibly impactful to the tech player. That's not to say that they should just get every single mex on the map, definitely not, but you know, if you can effectively increase their economy by a significant amount this early on, then it's definitely worth your interest to do it. So one of the key differences that you already see between the 6 mex and the 5 mex start is that the 5 mex start is already quite accelerated with regard to its energy, with regard to its build power, whereas our 6 mex start is a little bit behind. And that's naturally what you would expect, right? Because you had to walk longer to get there. So your initial timings are going to be delayed. But what I want you to pay attention to is the timing of the actual units that are coming out and when they would roughly be hitting the front line. We're going to assume, for the purpose of this video, that that there is a transport that would come and pick up the unit, so do pay attention to that. But you can see the timing on the labs here is relatively similar. And one thing to note is that it's kind of hard to measure metal amounts just because of reclaim, especially because if you reclaim a building, it will count towards your metal total. So just be aware of that. So every time like you reclaim a solar, you get an extra 150 metal. So we've got our first Quaker now coming out. So this is at the 5-minute 33 mark. Keep in mind, this is with the Season 3 changes. Okay, so that's our first Quaker coming out here. And we'll drive it up towards halfway towards that position at the front. And here now you can see our first Quaker arriving for our 6 mex opening. So 5 minutes 50. So about 20 seconds or so afterwards. Now, there's obviously you've got all of this distance that you've got to drive. So the first one's probably going to get flown out, but the second one, the third one, the fourth one, they're all going to have to drive out there. But what's interesting to note is this is where the 6 mex gets ahead of the 5 mex. Essentially what we can see is because we've walked that 6 mex a little bit earlier, it's come up online earlier. So now it means we can get our units out. So now our 4th unit is coming out. Our 4th Quaker is coming out faster than what is coming out from the 5 mech. So it's really small details here, but as you can see, we've now got our 5th Quaker out. So not only is the 5th Quaker actually faster coming out of the lab here, but it's also in the front of the base. So because of that, I think that the 6 mechs is slightly better, but this is only for simulation environments. This doesn't include, say for example, you get gifted a whole bunch of metal from an ally. Now all of a sudden the 5 mechs opening becomes better simply because you've already got that earlier energy, that earlier build power ready to stuff into those buildings, so you can immediately, translate that over. So let's take a look at what that build order actually looks like. Okay, so let's take a look at the build order. So starting off, where's our music? Okay, there it is. So starting off, it is our standard 3 mechs opening, just mainly because we want to take metal. Metal's a good thing. Then we're going to drop down the solar afterwards, and then we're going to walk the last 2 mechs, throwing down another solar. When we do it, very important. This is all pretty standard. Now at this stage, we're going to throw down our lab. We're going to queue up the units that we need. So we need a Constructor, a Grave Robber, and then another Constructor. If your air player asks for a Constructor, make sure that they don't pay you until your lab has begun. Otherwise, you will overflow metal. After that, immediately going into a solar collector, just to make sure that any energy that you've got is being funneled into this. Normally when you're playing as ARM, you can get the Constructor out very, very quickly, but with Core, it's a little bit more expensive. So just because of that, this Constructor's then going to walk, grab both of these mexes. Of course, if you're not giving it to you, like I was in my game, which was very fortunate. I will just say right now that compared to this side over here, so your 5 mech start here is this mex into this mex into this mex. Then I think you want to walk in this direction and then come grab this. Then you need to send a Constructor out here to grab this, but you also need to send a Constructor down here to grab this one as well. So I think maybe on this position, a 6 mech start might be optimal, just because you have to create one less Constructor, because here your 5th or your 6th and then your 7th mechs are basically in the same line, so you can just use the one Constructor for it. So just be aware of that. So meanwhile, behind here, we'll speed it up back to 2x speed. So we've got our Resbot coming out. One of the things that I've started doing as well is just circling the rocks like this. Okay, and then from here, what I'm going to say, and I do this at the beginning of the game, it doesn't always work, and I'll put lines down here like that. I know it's kind of crazy, and then I just say, like, please leave the rocks for your friendly tech player. Something like that. Give them a little love heart, and then that way, because look, we need to be a bit greedy. I'll just say that, okay? Sometimes people leave it, sometimes they don't. That's okay. It's going to happen. We throw down the first construction turret within range of the commander. I think this is quite important. Initially, I was walking them over here and then building more constructors to go and assist. I don't think it's worth doing. I think it's just better to put down the construction turret in like a suboptimal position. So already here, you can see like this construction turret doesn't touch this mechs. But the reality is that when it comes to these construction turrets, we're not building them because they build mexes. And even if we did, we can just move them, right? We're going to have an air transport that we'll be picking up from our air player. At least we should be getting that. So we've got 3 solars. We'll be reclaiming these. After our 3 construction turrets, we're going to go into our advanced solar. Now, keep in mind that with regard to your advanced solars, you can actually do an advanced solar after your first construction turret or your second or your third. It doesn't really matter. It depends on how your energy is going. Like in this game before, I built 3 construction turrets, and then just as I finished the 3rd construction turret, wind went from like 14 to 0. Like literally it hit 0.0. And I was just like, okay, we're completely dead. It's not a good thing. It's rare that it happens, but it is possible. So just be aware of that. And then from here, so you can see like this is with wind at a constant 14, and you can see we're more than capable of handling like 3 construction turrets, commander, and a construction bot into this, and we're going to overflow as a consequence of that. So we need to make sure that we get up our storage. So we're going to be throwing down the storage in the back, and we're going to be overflowing a huge amount of energy because of that. So we want to try and prioritize that storage, just because when it comes to your energy, there's 2 primary times when you will need extra energy. Number 1 is when you're building your T2 lab, and number 2 is when you're building Quakers and you've got metal in the bank. So you will drain on that energy quite quickly. So here, now what we're doing is just reclaiming everything before we go and blow our commander. Very important. Keep in mind he's got build power, so you need to use that build power. Make sure that whenever you do, try not to overflow. So you can see here that we might potentially overflow the vehicle plant, so we will need to dump that metal into the advanced vehicle plant before we reclaim it. Actually, we're doing okay here at the moment, but you can see we're sitting on about 600, so very, very close, and you typically want to avoid that. At the same time, after you finish the storage, there's a good chance your energy will eventually overflow anyway, so just dropping down a couple of energy converters is a really smart move to guarantee that any energy that's excess is going to be able to assist you out. Now, part of the reason why we want to build extra build power, as you can see right here, we've only got 3 construction turrets, but there are some games where I'll go up to 4, even 5 construction turrets, is because when you get given a whole bunch of metal, basically you have trouble spending that. So you need to be able to spend that. And of course, with more metal comes the requirement for more energy because you've got more build power. So because of that, it means that there are some games where I'll go like 4 construction turrets. If I get an early enough donation, sometimes I'll even go into 5 with the extra advanced solars. But for the moment, we're just going to go with a 3 and 3, I think is the best. It's a nice blend. You've also got the winds back here, so that in the event there's high wind, you're going to be able to convert. If in the event that there's low wind, you're going to be able to stay alive compared to somebody who doesn't go for a solar. Now, keep in mind, this is plus 80 energy a solar, so it feels very, very good. So we've got the 7 mexes here, as you can see, and we're now going to start pumping out units. This is still quite early, so this is a decent game, a decent timing that we've got. We're also reclaiming our constructors and only keeping a single construction bot, because that's all we need. If we were to look at their build power to their metal, so you can see here we're 85 build power to 120 metal. So let's double that. Let's say 240 metal, and it's 170 build power. And then we click on this, you can see this has got 200 build power, so more build power, and it costs less, 230. Now, of course, it can't move, but the idea is efficiency, right? Like, it is less efficient than a construction turret, and therefore we don't want to keep all of these. We don't really have a reason to keep them right now. We will have an arm atlas, or we'll have a transport, so that in the event that we want to build our advanced metal extractors, so let's say we want to build one out here, we've only got the 1 construction turret touching, then we would prioritize moving these guys out over here. But of course, in saying that, we would make sure that any of the advanced metal extractors that are touching these construction turrets, we would build those first rather than coming out here. Then we'd be able to transport in the end. But as you can see, we've got a decent number out at a good timing here. I think that this is because of the season 3 changes. You can still rush a T3 lab by going for like 2 construction turrets. I've even seen players looking to do like keeping the commander, which I think is probably a reasonable choice, and we'll see how it goes. But at the moment, it definitely seems like the wise thing is still to blow the commander. I have seen rumors about them potentially changing the commander even more to try and make it so that you keep the commander for a bit longer, because I don't think they like players blowing the commander. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I played Beyond All Reason, it was a little bit unintuitive. I'm like, so I'm blowing my commander, eating it so that I can get ahead. Okay, seems a bit weird. Like, the commander's meant to be like the central component to an army, or to like yeah, you get the idea, right? Like a civilization, the commander is everything. So why are we just killing him at the beginning? Anyway, that's essentially it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully you've seen a different way that the front can be, or the tech position can be approached. And I guess I will just say, just to caveat this entire video, keep in mind, I don't know how it works at the lower levels. People might flame you because you don't get a T2 constructor, but typically people are going to understand if you're spamming out units like this, if you're handing them over to allies, and those allies are making gains at the front, they're going to be able to reclaim metal, they're going to be able to send it back to you, and you're going to be able to pay for T2 cons for the whole team off that, and at the same time win the front. That's the key distinction. We saw in the last game a huge amount of advanced metal extractors on pretty much every single player here, but it meant nothing in the end, primarily because their fronts were dead. So even though their metal extractors, their advanced metal extractors were all up, it meant nothing. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.